Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a masterclass on ransomware free IT with Arcserve Appliance. My name is Boguan. So today I'll be covering this particular topic. For those who are familiar with Arcserve, you'll notice that we focus a lot on software, but actually not only software itself, but we are also very much into hardware appliance in terms of our total end-to-end solution, right? Solutions like our UDP software, that is, I believe most people are very familiar with, right? We also have our hardware appliance that can actually help you to protect your environment as well, right? And even for customers who want to have a copy of data offsite, we have the cloud backup solution with cloud hybrid, right, or even cloud direct, and other cloud offering that we actually provide. Okay, so also plus the fact that we are also bundling Sophos with our solution, right, including our software, UDP, our appliance, and now we also have immutable storage, right, with OneSafe. Right, so today's topic I'll be covering mainly on our appliance and how using our appliance it can actually help you to better protect your environment, right? We have a couple of appliances under our portfolio, including the 9000 series, X series, N series, and OneSafe, right? So what exactly are these appliances? I think that is the purpose of today's presentation, right? So before that, I just want to quickly run through in terms of what are we facing today in terms of the threat from ransomware, right? And it's still very sad to see that many customers are still not prepared, right, and not ready to protect themselves or even recover back from a ransomware attack. And having 7 or more days to regain back the data after an attack is not acceptable, and which means that the company most likely will be out of business very soon, right? And ransomware is also evolving, right? And the payout is getting higher and higher, right? And there are trends where there are websites that are providing ransomware as a service. They even provide support hotline, and this is really scary, right? Which means that all IT organizations, right, we are under threat from this attack, right? So is there a way where you can actually protect yourself, right? From Arcserve perspective, right, we believe in what we call a multi-model strategy. It's not a single silver bullet solution, but the more comprehensive that you have in terms of the prevention strategy, the better chance of you to recover from such attack, right? I believe most organizations, you will have some form of network security, access control into your organization, IT environment. This is not what we are focusing on, right? From Arcserve's perspective, right, we are in the orchestrated recovery, right? Whereby we have our appliance, our UDP software, doing the backup at the same time being protected against ransomware attack, right? With Sophos, right? And we have also upgraded in terms of our strategy, right? In line with what IDC is also advocating to have 3-2-1-1 backup strategy, right? So the additional digit 1 at the back, right, from compared to the previous 3-2-1 strategy, that is the immutable storage. And we have the solution today, right, with Arcserve Immutable OneSafe storage, right? And of course, in terms of the organization, right, you have your own processes, right? Whether it's a DR drill that you conduct yearly, or even educating your own employees, right, to let them know in terms of the threat that they are facing. If they see any suspicious email, do not click on the attachment itself, right? So 3-2-1 strategy, right, is already old. Today we are talking about 3-2-1-1, right? So what exactly is 3-2-1-1, right? As I mentioned earlier, right, the last digit is the immutable storage, right? The first digit 3 is actually referring to having one primary copy of your data, which is your production, plus 2 backup copies. And 2 backup copies on different type of media, disk, tape, right? That is 2 different media, for example, right? And 1 copy of site, right? Plus another copy, we are talking about the immutable storage. And immutable storage will actually help you whether it's an on-premise immutable copy or in the cloud, right? Because ransomware will not be able to, right, make changes to the immutable copy of your backup, right? So we are talking about having a very important defense, right? Not only with your last line of defense with your backup software solution, but also first line of defense to guard against the attack from ransomware, right? So first line of defense in Arcserve, right, we are actually partnering with Sophos, right, to provide the first line of defense on our UDP solution and appliance. Okay, right. So this is what we have been working with our partner Sophos, right, to bundle in the Sophos into our UDP appliance, right? Be it the 9000 series or N series or the X series appliance. Okay, right. Just to share with you, right, we have been constantly upgrading in terms of our Arcserve appliance offering, right? When we first started in the year 2015, right, we have the 7000 series, and then we follow up with the second generation, which is the 8000 series, and now we are on the 9000 series, which was launched a couple of years back, as well as the X series, right? And those in the red, you can see we have just launched in May, sometimes I think late May, right? We launched an additional series of our N series appliance, right, to cater for more range in terms of the capacity that customer needs, right? As well as the OneSafe appliance has been also refreshed with the 4500 series, which I will cover in the slide later on. Okay, right. So what is Sophos Intercept X Advanced for server, right? I have been mentioning about Sophos several times in this presentation, right? So we actually partner with Sophos, and we are using Sophos Intercept X Advanced for server to protect the backup data, which is the backup data store. Right, so basically what it does is it will stop any unknown threat and prevent the ransomware attack, as well as denying the attacker. Right, the technology behind Sophos, it actually uses CryptoGuard as well as WhiteGuard. Right, so CryptoGuard is for the file protections against ransomware attack. Right, it identifies any malicious encryption behavior. Right, you'll try to isolate the process, as well as even to roll back the affected files as well, right? Not only file protection against ransomware, but also this protection, right, with WhiteGuard, right, to stop any malicious process from tampering with the system areas, right? So this is a solution that has been proven, right? It's best in class solution, not only from Arcserve perspective or from Sophos, but it has also been proven by the party as well, right? Sorry, let me go back to this slide. You can see that this is from ESG lab report, which has very high regards in terms of the accuracy, right, of the Sophos in detecting an attack, and also very low false positive rate. And there are also other third-party agencies that rated Sophos as very high in terms of the capability against ransomware and malware attack. Okay, right. So that is first line of defense, right? So from Arcserve, right, our UDP software acts as the last line of defense, right? So we use UDP to back up your production environment, right? Be it agent-based or agent-based, and of course the key things that every customer will want is the recovery, right? The ability to recover not only files, folders, you can also recover back as a full system, whether it's using VMR, or you can also use advanced feature like instant VM or virtual standby to quickly spin up, right, your virtual machines, your production environment from the backup, right? As well as integrating with cloud, right? Having a single console to manage, right? As well as the 3-2-1-1 strategy, which UDP we can actually work together with our immutable storage, which is based on OneSafe, right? That will provide the 3-2-1-1 strategy that you needed. Right, let's take a look at the 9000 series. Right, so 9000 series, as I mentioned earlier, right, is bundled with Sophos, right? So that will act as the very first line to guard against any attack on the appliance data store, right, which is your backup data, right, which is very important, right? And with our UDP, right, that will use as a last line of defense to recover back any data that has been deleted or lost due to, it could be human errors or some other factors, right? So the appliance itself, right, we actually build it as a purpose build to include the backup capability as well as ability to protect against the attack from ransomware, which means that to customer, right, it's a peace of mind because we are the single point of contact for everything, including the software, the hardware itself, right? Setting up the appliance is also very straightforward, right? And we give customer options, right? Whether they want to have 4 hours on hardware on site or next business day support. Right, the appliance, as I mentioned, it comes built in with UDP, and you can see that the features that we have in terms of the UDP is exactly the same that what you'll get as a software solution, right? But now it's being built into the hardware appliance, and we have built-in Sophos as well, right, to protect the backup data on the appliance, right? And of course, if you want to integrate with OneSafe to have another copy of your backup, right, replicate to a OneSafe, that is something which is very comprehensive, which means that not only you have the Sophos as first line of defense to guard against ransomware attack, but now you also have an immutable copy of your backup, right? That cannot be compromised by ransomware. We have a couple of models, and in fact, 11 models of our appliance, right? If you look at the model itself, right, we have the entry model, we call that 9012 to 9048, right? So the entry models are running on the 1U form factor, right? 1U form factor appliance, and come with a single CPU, 48 gig of RAM, and SSD for the hash database, which is for the deduplication database. Right, the way we name our appliance, right, we call it 9012, right, which means that effectively it can protect 12 terabyte of capacity on your phone backup data. The usable will be based on 3-to-1, right, which is 4 terabyte usable. Right, similarly for 9048, you can see that effective capacity is 48 terabyte, usable capacity is 16 terabyte. Right, the higher end model, that is the DR model, right? Starting from 9072 to 9504 DR, right? And these are on 2U form factor appliance with 2 CPUs, 192 gig, as well as the SSD, which is mirrored. The highest range, which is 9504, will have more memories, right, on the appliance, right, to cater for the larger backup workload requirement as well. Right. So which model to use? Typically, we will understand what is the customer requirement first, right? In terms of their backup policies, retention, what is the production data size that need to be protected, you know, as well as the yearly growth rate and how many years of projections are we sizing for, right? So based on all these factors, we will be able to do a sizing and propose the right solution, right, to our customer requirement, right? So that is the typical process that we have been all along been doing with all customer needs in terms of the appliance solution, right? And the appliance solution, we are also providing capability to expansion, right? For the DR models, the entry models 9012 to 9048 doesn't have the storage expansion kit because all the drive slot has already been fully populated, right? But for the DR models, right, from 9072 onwards, right, there are empty slots that can allows you to put in expansion kit, right? We have different expansion kit. 9x48 has 48 terabyte effective, which is 16 terabyte usable that you can actually add into the appliance. Basically, this is just a couple of drive, right? In this case, if you purchase a 9x48, you will come with 4 by 8 terabyte of hard disk, right? So 8 by 4 terabyte, you can actually use it and plug into the appliance empty drive slot, right? Configure the RAID, and after that, you can actually add into the appliance as your backup data store. Right, so how do we interpret the table below here? You can see that for 9072 DR, right, if you purchase the 9x48 to expand the capacity, right, so that would be 48 effective capacity terabyte plus 72 terabyte, that is 120 terabyte effective capacity, right? So that is how you interpret this table and so on. So the rules, the computation applies to all other models as well. Besides capacity expansion on the 9000 appliance, right, we also have a RAM expansion kit, right? So basically the RAM expansion kit will allow you to add in additional RAM kit, right? So for the entry models, you can add additional 2 kits to go up to 80 gig of capacity, right, for the memory. Right, for the DR models, right, depending on the models, right, you can add in additional up to 3 kits, right? So from 9072 to 9360 DR, right, you can go up to 384 gigabyte of memory, right? On the 9504, it can go up to 768 gig of memory using the 32 gig DIMM, right? We also have another RAM upgrade kit. We call that, right, RAM upgrade kit based on larger DIMM size, which is 64 gig DIMM, right? But you have to replace the existing DIMM, right? So which means that with the RAM upgrade kit, right, for even for the entry model, right, it can go up to 512 gigabyte, right, using 8 by 64 gig of DIMM. Right. For the higher models, I can go up to 1.5 terabyte, right, using 64 gig DIMM, 24 in total, right, and that will give you a huge memory that you need if you need to run, for example, virtual standby, or you need to have more memory to cater for your backup environment. Okay, and we also have SSD flash, right, expansion kit as well, right? So this will cater for customers who want to run DR on the appliance, right? to run, for example, virtual standby, so that you can actually physically run your DR on the appliance, right? Or use it as a continuous ability replica target or for instant VM, right? So these are the options that you can actually put into the DR appliance. Maximum 2 kits, right, on 9072 to 9144, because of the number of drive slots that you have, right? The empty drive slot, so you can have 2 kits. But for the higher end model from 9192 onwards to 9360, you can only put in 1 SSD expansion kit, right? Because of the limited drive slots. There are also additional components, right, such as the 25 gig optical Ethernet, 16 gig fiber channel. These are all optional HBA cards, right, that can be purchased separately, right, to add in onto your appliance, so that you can connect to a higher bandwidth 25 gig Ethernet, for example. Or if you need to connect to your fiber channel tape library via a SAN, then you can actually also purchase the 16 gig fiber channel card, right? So that you can actually do the connectivity to your fiber channel SAN environment, right? Default on the entry model, we have 2 10 gig copper ports, right? And on the DR models, there are actually 4 ports of 10 gig base T. Just to share some diagrams, this is how our 10 gig base T card HBA looks like. Right? Basically, you'll be using Cat7 cables to connect to it. Right? If you purchase the 10 gig SFP, right, you also need to purchase the transceiver, right? 2 of them. And connectivity wise, you can use OM4 fiber cable, LC to LC connectors. Right. Similarly, for the 25 gig SFP card, right, you have to purchase the transceiver as well, right? For the 16 gig fiber channel card, right, it comes with the transceiver, right? So when you purchase the dual port fiber channel card, right, the transceiver is already included, right? The cable is also OM4. Right, just to quickly run through, in case you're wondering, right, how do we actually configure a new appliance, right? So basically, when you keep up the appliance, we power it up, right? You come to this screen whereby you can actually enter your host name of your appliance, right? And you can also add your appliance into your domain, right? And you'll be able to see, right, the network interface, right, on the appliance, and you can configure it, right? If you click on edit, right, you'll bring you to this screen, and you can either use the default DHCP. If you want to fix a particular IP, you can actually do that as well. Uncheck and do that, okay? And after that, you give your options to select whether you want this appliance to be a standalone, or you'll be actually managed by another UDP appliance console, right? So why we provide this is for environment whereby you have only a single appliance, right? You will use the first option, which is standalone instant, right? But if you have, say, already have one appliance and you add in another appliance, right? You can put them as separate UDP console, or you can use your old existing appliance to manage the new appliance, right? So that will be the option 2, right? Whereby you use the existing console on your appliance to manage the new appliance. So that is the options that we provide, right? And as well as your data store, right? You enter your encryption password, right? Email alerts, notification configurations, right? You can enter that as well, right? If you will be replicating between site to sites, right? Then you will have to enter what is the remote managed RPS information as well, right? Otherwise, you just need to select the other option, right? This appliance will not replicate to any remotely replicating RPS, right? So this is typically if you have only a single site, right? And also single appliance. Okay, so once this is done, basically you're ready to use the appliance, right? You just need to go into the UDP console, right, to do your configuration. The normal way of creating your backup plan, adding your backup nodes, right? So the rest will be typically very straightforward and similar to what you'll be using for UDP software solution. Right, as I mentioned, beside the 9000 appliance, we also have the X series appliance. Right, so for the X series appliance, you notice that it's actually a larger appliance. Like actually in total is 7U, right, with the compute nodes and the storage node, right, 2U plus 5U. Right, so this X series appliance will give you ability to back up larger capacity, right? Especially for customers who have hundreds terabytes of production environment that need to be backed up, or a couple of petabytes, right? In terms of the software, it's the same UDP that we use on the 9000, right? It also comes bundled with Sophos, right? These are the 5 models that we have on the X series. Right? Even with the entry model X1000DR, right, it comes with 352 terabytes of usable capacity. Right? So if we were to use the 3:1 ratio, effective capacity that we can protect for the production environment is about 1 petabyte. Right? If you will move higher to the higher end models, right, the X3000DR comes with 1 petabyte usable capacity, right? And which means that you can protect more than 3 petabytes of production data size, right? If you look at the hardware configuration itself, right, because of the large amount of backup workload that we need to protect on the X series, right? The compute, right, it comes with 2 Xeon Go 6258R, right? In total 56 cores of compute power and default 1 terabyte of memory, which can be upgraded to 2 terabytes if needed, right? And there is also a 4 ports 10 gig BSD, right, included, right? And if you look at the SSD, this is actually for the OS, which is running on the appliance, as well as for the hash database. Okay. Right. So similarly on the X series, right, there are also some optional items like the 25 gig Ethernet card, right, the 10 gig SFP, the fiber channel card. These are all optional items. Okay. So what are the software that are included, right, onto the X series? Right, so if you were to look at the software packages here, right, the first 3 items are already included by default. Right, so these 3 items are the UDP Premium Edition, right, Arcserve Backup, right, Sophos Intercept X Advanced for servers, right. The other 2 optional item is Arcserve Continuous Ability, right. If you are familiar with RHA, right, this is actually continuous ability, right. Right, so this is optional, right, if you want to run continuous ability on the appliance as a target, right, or to integrate with Cloud Fabric. This is also an optional add-on, right, for the appliance. Right, just to share how do we compare in terms of a 1 petabyte configuration. Right, if you to look at 1 petabyte configuration against other vendors, right, we can squeeze 1 petabyte into a 7U appliance, right, and our power consumption is also the lowest, right, compared to others. Right, so this is something which I believe customer will be interested because rack space is also limited, right, and power is also a very important factor, right. Nowadays the utility price are all going up, right, and this is something which is important consideration as well. Okay, N series, right. Our N series is actually another options which we provide our end customer to have in terms of ability to scale out the backup appliance, right? So this is a hyper-converged backup appliance, and it's powered by Nutanix, right? And also secured by Sophos, right? So you see that Sophos is everywhere, right? Sophos is on the 9000, is on the X series, is also on the N series, right? It's bundled with all our UDP appliance. Right, so this is how it looks like on the front bezel. Right, so as I mentioned, this is actually based on Nutanix hyper-converged hardware infrastructure, right? And we bundle on top of it our UDP, which is for data backup and recovery, and Sophos for the first line of defense against ransomware attack, right? Right, so which means that in terms of the support itself, Arcserve is still the single point of contact, right? We are the single vendor, right, to provide this Nutanix powered backup appliance, right? And it's very simple, right? We have one single SKU for all these bundled together, right? And if customer face any technical issue, right, in terms of the backup or the hardware, right, they can come to Arcserve support, right, to help them with the troubleshooting. Right, so just to share a little bit, the UDP software that we have bundled into the N series, right? This has been used by many customers worldwide. It has been proven, right, in terms of the backup and recovery capabilities. And the key thing about the N series is the Nutanix hyper-converged infrastructure, right? So it actually provides a high ability, right, in terms of the hardware, and you can also scale, right, scale out to add capacity and performance on the fly. And in terms of management, you use a single pane of management using Prism, right? And from Prism, you can also launch a UDP, right? And in terms of the data store, we are actually saving the data store into Nutanix object, which is also immutable, okay? And Sophos, right, will be the first line of defense, right, running on the N series appliance. Okay. Right. So clustering, this is not a new term, right? So with clustering capability on the N series, you can actually scale out and also to increase the data ability that you have backup on the appliance N series, right? Scalability, you can start small. The key is you can start with a smaller number of nodes, and as your capacity requirement increases, right, you can add in more nodes later on. Right? So that is very flexible, which actually help you to reduce your capex, right? And when you scale, your performance also scale, right? So that is one key components as well, right? And also resilient to any in terms of the ability when you scale, right? So there's no disruption when you add in the expansion node, or even when there's a hardware failure, right? A node failure, it doesn't affect the N series backup capabilities, right? And your data is also encrypted at rest, right? Using a UDP encryption, and it's also written onto a worm, which is the Nutanix object storage, right? So that provide the capability to be immutable, right, for the backup. Right. N series you can also replicate into a cloud environment if you want to have another copy of backup immutable storage in S3, for example. Object log, that is possible as well. Right, let's take a look more in terms of the product details. Right. So basically, if you look at the architecture of the N series, right, at the very bottom, that will be the N series node, right? So that will form as the very basic hardware infrastructure, and running on top will be Nutanix Acropolis OS, right? And we use Nutanix objects, right, to save our backup data store, right? So backup data store is created here. So all backup will be saved onto Nutanix objects, right? And of course, the AHV will be Nutanix hypervisor. There will be a couple of VM by default will be created on the N series, right? So there's a VM1 and VM2, right? So VM1 will be the one that house the UDP console, the RPS, proxy, and Sophos. And VM2 is the Linux backup server, right? So by default, these are the two VMs that will be created, right? And in terms of dashboard, right, you have the Prism dashboard, right, and you can see the status of the UDP backup from Prism, and from within Prism itself, you can also launch the UDP web console. So this is how the UDP dashboard looks like within Prism, right? You can see in terms of the job status, RAM or hash usage, storage, throughput, etc., and alerts. UDP alerts are also shown on the Prism, right? And you can launch UDP from here, as I mentioned, right? And UDP console will be very similar to what the software view as well as the interface. Right, the N series, we have launched 4 models in May, right? So the 4 models that we launched is the N1100, N1200, 1400, and 1600, right? So every models will come with 4 nodes, right? 4 nodes by default. Right, for the 1100, it comes with 2U, right, with 4 nodes built in. The higher models like the 1200 will have 4 U's, and the larger one, 1400 and 1600, will have 8 U, right, in terms of the rack space occupied. And these are the number of drive. And in terms of usable capacity, on the 1100, right, that is 40 terabyte usable. Right. If you need larger capacity in terms of usable backup space, you can go with the 1200 or 1400 or the 1600. Right, that can go up to 240 terabyte. Right, running on 4 nodes. Right. But this is not all. We also provide the scale-up nodes. Right. As I mentioned, N series is based on Nutanix, which means that it can scale out, right? So if you want to have more capacity, right, you can purchase the scale out nodes, right? And for the scale out node itself, right, the 1100, right, has its own scale out nodes, 40 terabyte. If you want to have scale out nodes for the 1200 is 25 terabyte. For the 1400 is 50 terabyte and 70 terabyte for the larger 1600. Right, so this is the options that we provide for the N series, right? Okay, so I've covered the 9000 series, the X series, and the N series. The last appliance that I'll be talking for the next maybe 20 minutes will be on the Arcserve OneSafe. Right, so OneSafe is a object storage, right? That provide NAS capability and immutable snapshot built into it. Right, so in terms of the use case, most customers will use it as an immutable storage, use it as a backup target, or even use it as a storage for the unstructured data. Right, so in terms of use case wise, right, it's actually multi-purposes. Right, but in today's presentation, I'll be focusing more on the immutable storage and backup. Right, and you can see, you know, when you talk about immutable storage, right, the key is to protect against ransomware, right? And it can be a direct backup data store, or it can be a replication target, right? Using OneSafe as the replication target, right? And in many cases, we also use OneSafe as a backup target for other backup solution, right? And it works very well. So what exactly is immutable, right? So when we talk about immutable, it means that data is fixed. You cannot change it, you cannot delete it, and that is the attributes that prevent ransomware, right, from affecting the backup data, right? And typically, you want to make sure that your backup data is also protected against ransomware, and also to meet the compliance, right? And because it's immutable, right, it also guarantees that when it comes to recovery, you can recover back your backup data, right? Right, so the OneSafe, right, is a scale of storage, right? And one thing which I will talk about this later on, right? In terms of more details, how we use weightless, right, data protection. There's no LAN that we configure on the OneSafe, right? Okay, and built-in is also it has dedupe compression, right? Continuous data protection with immutable snapshot, right? Encryption at rest, and you can also scale out, right? Most customer maybe they will start with one node, right? As the requirement increases in terms of the capacity, right? For the backup or even for unstructured data usage, right? They'll purchase more OneSafe node and add into the same cluster, right? To scale out the capacity, right? And you can see from the key here will be to have ability to protect against ransomware, right? So the OneSafe itself, right, it actually supports the familiar NAS protocol, right? NFS, SMB, right? So that is means that you can actually take advantage of the familiar NAS protocol, right, on OneSafe. And because of the object storage capability in terms of scalability and the built-in immutable snapshot, right, that provide you with the protection that you need, right, in today's environment, right? Immutable, that is key, right? So all snapshots are preserved and is original, right? Ransomware will not be able to delete or encrypt the snapshot. Okay, you can scale out, start with one node, and you can scale all the way up to 7 nodes, right? And with the latest model that we have with the 4500 series, we actually support 18 terabyte drive, right? And in future we'll support even larger drive. And the replication factor, right, will be critical in terms of helping you to protect against multiple drive failure, right? We can survive 2 drive failure easily without any issue, right? And next protocol, right? You can use either NFS or SIF, right? Right. So in terms of scalability, right? Most customers, as I mentioned, will start with 1 node, right? And after that, they can scale up to maybe 3 nodes or even higher, go up all the way to 7 nodes within a single cluster, right? And one thing which you can also do is to add drive into empty slot in the chassis, right? Non-destructively, right? And when you add new drive, it will be auto detected and the capacity will be utilized, right, automatically, right? So that is something which those customers that has been using it, they really love the ability to do drive addition non-destructively, right? We can add all the way up to 7 nodes, right? And we can survive up to 2 nodes failure for the failure fault tolerance, right? If you have a larger cluster size, right? And we provide up to 5 years of support, right? You can select 3 years as well if you want to. Now let's take a look at how exactly the one-safe object storage works, right? So typically when the data arrive at the one-safe, right, we'll divide the stream into objects, right? And of course, after that, you'll be compressed, dedupe, and after deduplication, the data objects will be distributed, right, and saved onto multiple drives. And you notice that, let me rewind back. You notice that this particular red color objects will be saved onto 3 different drives, 1, 2, and 3, right? Which means that you have 3 copies of data, similar data, right, being saved onto one safe. And it applies to all the objects, right? You will save 3 copies of your data, right? So having 3 copies of data, which means that even if you lost 2 copies, which is 2 drives, right, your data is still intact, right? It's still protected, right? And you can still access to your data, right? And what happens when the drive fail? I believe this is most customer will be asking, right? Since there is no RAID protection, right? What is the events of a drive failure? Right. So in this particular example here, right, if there's a single drive failure, right, so it turns red. Right. One safe will detect that the drive has failed, and it will actually redistribute and make sure that there are 3 copies of data on the one safe storage itself, right? So that will maintain the consistency, right? To have 3 copies of data on one safe. Right, so say you have received a good drive, right, and now you plug into the one safe appliance, right? It could be a larger drive, but it doesn't matter because there's no RAID, right? So you are not bind to the same drive capacity, okay? And automatically detected by one safe, and you will notice the blocks are redistributed onto the new replaced drive, right? And you can add in more drive non-destructively, as I mentioned. It need not be the same capacity. There's no RAID running on it, right? So you can see a different combination of a drive capacity. And in future, if you want to replace everything with the 12 terabyte, you can do it progressively, right, one at a time. Right, so this is one safe. And in the larger environment, right, for example, in this case, there's a file share called file storage, and you're running off your capacity, and you decided to add in more nodes onto the clustering, right? So say you add in the nodes, right? And what will happen is OneSafe will auto detect and redistribute, right, the objects onto the new nodes that it has been detected, right? So there's no configuration that you need to do, right? You just need to add it into the clustering, and you redistribute automatically for you, right? So that's the beauty of OneSafe object storage. Right, so coming back to the question, right? We don't use RAID, right? So because we don't use RAID, we don't have to mix and match the drive capacity. We are not binded by having you must use a certain number of drive for the RAID set, right? And because we are writing multiple copies of the data onto OneSafe object storage, that will actually guarantee you data integrity as well, right? So I have a couple of slides to talk about the differences between RAID and OneSafe object storage. Right. So on the left-hand side, I believe this is what most people will be familiar with, right? For RAID set, maybe RAID 5, some vendors will recommend to use 8+1, RAID 6, 8+. So for example, right, it varies from vendors to vendors, right? And you have to create a spare drive, right? On the traditional RAID storage, okay? And when there's a hard drive failure, right, what will happen is it goes into what we call RAID rebuild, right? And when it comes to RAID rebuild, right, typically for RAID 5, for example, right, for 1 terabyte without traffic, maybe 12 hours minimum. With 50% traffic, maybe 24 hours, right? For a larger drive capacity, right, it can go up to even 8 days to rebuild for 8 terabyte drive, right? And not to forget, there's also performance degradation, right, when you do a drive rebuild, right? So that is what a traditional RAID will actually incur. But for the OneSafe object storage, when we encounter a drive failure, right, that will not be, it will be very different, right? As I mentioned earlier, right, okay, sorry, before that, right? So if there are multiple drive failure, right, on the RAID storage, right, especially let's say it's a RAID 5. RAID 5, you can only have one drive failure, right? If you have two drive failure at the same time, right, the RAID 5 will be gone, right? And you have more than two drive failure, right, happening on the nodes, right? The whole nodes is gone, right? It's down. Okay, and which means that there will be data loss. Right? On OneSafe, you can have single drive failure, no problem, because you have 3 copies of your data written onto OneSafe, right? And this is what happens. In the previous slide that I actually show you in terms of the animations, right? One drive failure, you redistribute in terms of the objects. Even 2 drive failure, not an issue as well, because you do the redistribution again, right? And you always maintain 3 copies of your production data on OneSafe. Okay, so you know, notice there's no review, right? There's no penalty that will be incurred when there's a single drive or 2 drive failure. Right? Next, let's take a look at node failure. Now, so what happens if there's a node failure? Right, on the traditional RAID on the left-hand side, when there's a node failure, controller fail, for example, right, you lose data access, right, to other nodes as well, right, because they are part of the same storage, right? So that is the penalty, right, or disadvantage of a traditional RAID storage compared to a single node failure on, say, OneSafe with 3 nodes here. that you lose the node, but you still have access to the data, because as I mentioned, you have 3 copies of data, which means that you still have 2 copies of your product of your data on the surviving nodes. So there's no impact. Okay. What about adding drive? Right, adding drive is actually very simple compared to RAID. Right, so I'll start with the RAID drive addition. You can see that you need to follow some rules, right? Whether you have to based on 7+1, for example, right? To create a new RAID, right? It has to be identical disk capacity, right? But on the OneSafe, right? You just add drive, right? You don't need. There's no configuration basically, right? Because it's not running on RAID, okay? And you can use the storage immediately. Right, so how does OneSafe helps you in terms of protecting your data that is already saved onto written onto OneSafe? Right, so the feature that actually helps with ransomware protection is continuous data protection, which is the immutable snapshot. Right, so we create a snapshot every 90 seconds for the first hour, and after that we do hourly, daily, weekly, and even monthly snapshots, right? On OneSafe, right? Because the snapshot are immutable, if a ransomware attack do occurs, you can actually use the snapshot to completely recover back, right, the affected files, right? And recovery from the snapshot is also very simple. Right, I'm just quoting a simple example here. Maybe this is a file share that has been compromised by ransomware. Right, so within the folder itself, you can look for a snapshot folder. Right, so if you were to go into the snapshot folder, you will see that all your files are still there, it's still intact, and you can just copy back, right, to your production environment using the snapshot copy. Okay, so it's very straightforward and simple. Right, if the whole file share is affected, you can also go into OneSafe, promote the old snapshot, right, to become production. Right, so that is for recovering of the whole file shares. Right, so for the 4500, this is what we have just launched. This will replace the 4412 and 4417 series, right? So what we have launched is the 4511296, 144, and 216. Right, so 96 is the raw capacity, right? So 441.296 is actually 96 terabyte raw capacity. That is 8 by 12 terabyte, right? And it comes with either 4 by 10 gig base T or SFP. Right, 4512144 will have 144 terabyte and it's using 18 terabyte drive, right? The larger capacity. And 4512-216 is 12 by 18 terabyte. Okay, so if you were to fully populate your clustering with 7 nodes, right, on the 96 model, right, it can go up to 672 terabyte, right? And on the dash 216, it can go up to 1.5 petabyte, right, with 7 nodes, right, in the same cluster. Right, so with the launch of the 4500 series, we actually increase in terms of capacity by 50% with the larger drive, right, and also better performance using Optane link, and also more memory, 696 gig and more on the appliance. Right, for existing customers that are already using the 4400 series, right, not to worry, you can also add the 4500, right, onto an existing OneSafe ring, right, running on 4400. Right, you can actually mix them together. Right, and there are some other improvement, including showing a snapshot in local time, right, etc. Okay, so this is what I've mentioned earlier. We have replaced the NVDIMM with Optane as well as a higher performance CPU, right? So this is 1.5 times faster, and also the SSD, right? 2 terabyte instead of the older 1 terabyte SSD. Okay, so use cases. I just want to reiterate that, with Arcserve solution for data protection with our appliance, right? You can use, for example, a OneSafe as an immutable storage when you replicate between the 9000 series appliance to OneSafe, or you can use the OneSafe as the backup target, right, for the UDP software, right? And your UDP software, whether it's running as a software solution or appliance solution, is also protected by Sophos, right? So we actually providing a very comprehensive anti-ransomware protection solution, right? Not only using Sophos to guard against the first line of defense for the ransomware attack, we even have the OneSafe as an immutable storage, right, to help you with having a immutable snapshots, right, as well as using OneSafe, right, is, as I mentioned, is multi-purpose. You can also use it for unstructured data, right? So there's no harm, right? Using it as unstructured data, it actually helps you to use it for multi-purpose, right? And even as a NAS consolidation, right? Knowing that nowadays people are saving more contents onto the file shares, so we may need to have a larger NAS instead of having multiple NAS island, right? So you can actually consolidate multiple NAS island into OneSafe, right? So that is something which we can actually offer with our OneSafe appliance. Right, so I want to conclude the session with this slide. With Arcserve Appliance, right? We can help customer to have a ransomware-free IT. This is in line with the 3-2-1-1 backup strategy that everybody is talking about today, right? So with our backup appliance, whether it's 9000 X series or N series, is secured by Sophos, right? It's bundled, right? So Sophos will access the first line of defense, and the UDP software will provide the backup and recovery as a last line of defense, right? And with our immutable storage, OneSafe, right? You can use OneSafe as a backup target, right? For maybe UDP software, for example, or other third-party backup software, right? It works very well with third-party software as well, right? As a backup target. Or you can replicate the content on, say, our 9000 appliance, right, onto OneSafe, right? So you have another copy of your backup data on a immutable storage. Okay. Right, so that actually concludes my presentation today. I just want to quickly check if there's any questions on the chat itself. No? So what is the network? I think there are a couple of questions, and some of this has been answered, right? So what is the network system performance impact with the solution in place? Basically, whether you're using a 9000 or X series, right? If you look at the number of network ports that we provide for network, up to 4 ports, and that is of 10 gig, which is 40 gigabyte. And that is a large bandwidth that you can actually use, right, in your backup environment, right? And the fact that I think my colleague has also answered some of the questions, it comes with global deduplications, and that actually helps to reduce the backup network traffic as well, right? And we do infinite incremental backup, and that actually helps to speed up the backup and as well as the backup capacity that most customers need if they do not have a good infinite incremental or dedupe solution, right? So we have seen customers that actually enjoy 70% dedupe saving or even higher, right? So that is something which will actually help a lot of customers. So what is the difference for effective capacity and usable capacity? Okay, the usable capacity, in short, is what you create, what you can use after RAID creation, right? So that is the usable capacity. Right? Whether you're using RAID 5 or RAID 6, for example, right? After you created the RAID, you have a certain amount of capacity, and that is usable capacity. Right? Whereas for effective capacity, nowadays, because of deduplication, compression, when we talk about, for example, backup, right? We can have up to 3 times or even higher, right? Deduplication savings, and that is why we always multiply by factors. Usually, as a rule of thumb, we just use 3 to 1. So the effective capacity will be multiplied by 3. For example, your usable is 10 terabyte. Effective capacity that we can actually save onto 10 terabyte will be 30 terabyte effective capacity. Right? Can we back up Azure SQL database? Not at the moment, right? So thanks, King, for helping with that. After backup, is there confirmation that you can restore without errors? Yes, we can actually, on the appliance itself, because we're actually running UDP software, right, for the backup capability, you can actually run assured recovery, right? So that is what we call automated DR testing, right? So with automated DR testing, you're also confident that your backup is good and you can use it, right, if you really need to do any recovery. Right, so for OneSafe, how many drives can fail before the whole backup system fail? Right, I think depending on RF factor, right, replication factor. So RF2, you can 1 drive failure. RF3, you can 2 drive failure, right? And in the slide itself, I believe I have also shown some animations on how the drive failures are being handled. There's a last question. For the OneSafe, how is the antivirus protection implemented? Okay, that is, yes, that's correct. We are using Immutable Snapshot. Right, so immutable snapshots cannot be deleted or modified or compromised by any of, for example, ransomware or viruses. So that helps you to have the ability to recover back, right? If Snapshot used as NAS, how is the antivirus protection implemented? Basically, it's built in. I think this is similar to the questions, the previous question. Okay. It's based on the immutable snapshot, right? So immutable snapshot itself, right, is not exactly worm, right, but it has a similar behavior whereby you cannot delete, you cannot change it, and that's why in one of the slides that I shown, you can actually use the snapshot to recover back. I think there's another question here. Can Linux EX4 drive be backup too? I believe they are referring to your production environment. If my memory is correct, we do support ext4, right? For Linux environment, right? So yes, we can do that. Sure. Okay, so let me check if there is any other questions. I believe that is the last question. Okay, so if there's no more questions coming in, thanks everyone for your time, for attending today's sessions on how Arcserve Appliance can help you to have a ransomware-free IT with our appliance and have a good day, a good afternoon, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you, everyone.